Hi, I'm Marty Cohn, and this is BCTV's Meet the Candidates 2020, sponsored in part by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. This series affords you an opportunity to hear from the folks running for elected office. Today, our guest is State Representative Mike Maricki, a Democratic Party candidate for State Representative for Windham 4 District. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Marty. And thanks also to Court Trowbridge and all the good people at BCTV. Their work is always outstanding, but during COVID, I think people are looking a little more to local TV to get news and to get some information about what's going on. So thanks to all of them too.
Oh, okay. Well, now that means that I'm going to ask you some really, softball questions. Thank you very much for for that compliment. So let's delve right in. Why do you want to be state representative from Windham 4?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I'll start by offering that public service is an important part of me. It's an important part of the family that I grew up with. All four of my grandparents emigrated from Poland, ironically, inspired by the 2018 pandemic. My father's father lost two brothers to the flu at that time, to the pandemic. They came to this country and quickly established themselves with the ethic of work, but also giving back to their community. And that's something they instilled in me. And I've always been interested in doing that. More specifically to today, what's important to me is progress, but progress with justice. Progress with justice means bringing everybody into the picture when what we're talking about. And it's especially important now dealing with this triple pandemic of COVID, climate, and racial social justice. Any progress we make on these issues and the everyday issues from the 25 different committees of the House and Senate must be measured with an eye on justice. Are the values of equity and equality, of inclusion, basic fairness being brought to bear in the work we do? That's where progress with justice sets the intention that we can do better and we must do better.
All right. Well, so if you're reelected, what would be your top two priorities?
Well, given the times we're in, it would be a luxury to only have two top priorities. What's especially important to me is making sure of two things: that the people back home at the grassroots level, the people in Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster, know that their concerns are being brought to the State House. So there's the constituent service on the ground level and the policy level that's informed by what's happening for our people here. That's the headline of that. But the reality is that what we have to do first is make sure we continue to stay on top of COVID. We've had this abject lack of leadership from the current president. So states have to step up. They have to step up to keep people healthy, to get our economy going. Well, we can't forget about the other crisis. COVID at some point will fade away, but climate change will not. We just recorded the hottest September in history. And if you look back over the last few years, each successive month tends to be getting a little hotter. And we're starting to see the reality of that. We've had sunsets recently clouded by the smoke from the Western fires. And the reality is that we're in a drought in Vermont, which is almost unheard of. And these are the kind of predictions that scientists have been making, that we'd have more radical changes, ups and downs in our weather. And it's something we have to get on top of. Alongside that, though, we have the long-standing reality of systemic racism. And this is something we all have to be a part of. I've worked in human services for decades, and my last assignment was on the Human Services Committee. This current session, the speaker put me on House Government Operations Committee. She shared that she wanted my experience and my work ethic to help bring together people on some pretty tough issues. And what we worked on that's especially challenging and will continue to be working on are systemic racism, policing policies, training for police. How are we going to bring people together to make Vermont that welcoming place that we want for everybody? The reality is we have a lot of work to do in Vermont. There's a lot of good things we do here, but when you talk to the people of color in our communities, they'll tell you how difficult it is, the realities they face, the realities of another legislator, a person of color, shared with me when I asked, what's it like in the everyday, that he said, if I don't go into a store wearing a suit and tie, I get followed. Just about every store I go into. I don't know how I would feel, probably not too good. These are things we need to address as we move into the 21st century, if we want Vermont to be that welcoming place, and if we want to increase the population, if we want to fill the jobs that are going now because we don't have the people. It's a big piece we have to do, and I'm ready to take my part and continue that work in there.
All right. Well, let me ask you a couple of issue questions. If you're reelected, what would you do to ensure that more Vermont families with young children can find and afford childcare?
Sure. Speaking from my experience, starting out in human services way back when, as a child care provider, I can share how important this work is. And I know that right now there's a tough reality facing. So my answer is going to go in two different directions. First, immediately, if you're looking for childcare, you can't find it, I would call the Winston Prouty Center. They are the local resource and referral system. They can help you find childcare. If not at their site, then at other sites. They can get you connected with the subsidy system. What we're finding out right now, though, is there are a lot of people who need extra care because of the way the school schedules are, and they might not be eligible for the subsidy system. The legislature's put money into this. We're trying to make sure this gets out there. So that's something I want to hear about it. And if I'm not your state representative, then I would suggest you contact your state representative or your state senator. They need to know this information so we can get those resources to where they go. Long term, it's a bigger problem. These are workforce development issues, and along with a lot of other businesses, there's a shortage of work. The number one piece that I think is going to get more workers into the system is if we have to pay them a livable wage. There are larger centers which are doing a good job with this, but we have to make those investments. If people can make $15 an hour working at McDonald's, or $12 an hour working as a childcare worker at a very tough job, it might be hard I think that's why it is hard for our childcare centers to be finding people right now. The other piece is that we need to continue to make investments. As we require more training, we need to make sure those trainings are affordable themselves. And then the other piece, right down to parents, we need to make sure the subsidy system is actually helping. We have a robust subsidy system. We put millions of dollars with Vermont money and federal money into that subsidy system, but we have to make sure it's helping where it's needed most. So big issue, and it's one I feel strongly about, having worked in the field.
All right, so now let me ask you about the other end of the age spectrum. Recent reports indicate that seniors in Vermont face one of the highest rates of financial insecurity in the nation. How do you think we can make life for seniors more affordable?
Well, this is a political talk, and I'm going to be very political right now. The first thing we need is a new president. And here's the reason why in this realm. On August 8th, the current president signed an executive order which did away with current payroll deductions. Social Security does not exist without those payroll deductions. Social Security takes in just a little bit more every year than it sends out in benefits. And Forbes magazine reports that in 3 years, Social Security would go bankrupt if this president's current policy on payroll deductions doesn't get turned around. I think this president has spoken a long time that he wants to do away with Social Security. He wants to privatize it, Medicare, and these are services that Americans depend on, as they should. People have paid into Social Security for all their working lives. So that's the big one. You know, there's other things that we can continue to do. Choices for Care is a program through the Department of Aging and Independent Living that helps people stay in their homes, which is what they want to do as long as possible. A simple thing like the Meals on Wheels program is another thing. And this is another service that there has been attempts from Washington to cut. Meals on Wheels doesn't just bring a meal to somebody, it brings a connection. And there's research that shows that the connections that happen when somebody delivers a meal is also a supporting factor that helps people stay in their homes for longer than they might otherwise. I also believe that our seniors need to know that people are looking out for them. Adult Protective Services has to continue doing work to prevent abuse and neglect, and also take advantage, monetary advantage of seniors. Now, we just passed an Older Vermonters Act this year in the legislature, and they're going to be trying to pull together the research, the testimony from what's happening and how this is changing as more and more of us baby boomers are retiring, because the landscape is changing a little bit. But we want to make sure we have good information to continue to see how we can support our seniors. This is another area where we need to make the investments if we want to make Vermont the best place to live, work, raise a family, and retire to. And that's what I want to continue to do.
All right, good. Well, thank you for that answer. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get out of this coronavirus.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested in from you is what's your vision for Vermont in a post-COVID world?
Sure. I agree with you. I'm optimistic too. Once again, though, I think we're going to need some leadership at the national level. States are taking this on right now, but if you look at countries around the world, when they've had strong leadership that follows the science, those countries are opening up already. China, where this started out, is opening up in ways that didn't, and countries around the world are doing much better than we are, and we need to get past that first. Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, recently was quoted as saying that it's a shame to waste a good crisis. And not to take this lightly, but there's great opportunities for us. I think Vermont will come out of this stronger and wiser and more resilient. And but we need to be aware that, going back to what I shared about climate, some people say that COVID is a dress rehearsal for climate change and some of the things that will be happening. And that's why we have to continue working on climate change. We just passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, overriding the governor's veto, because we've lost 4 years at the state level without having a clear plan. We've lost 4 years at the national level without having a clear plan, or even a president that believes that climate change is real needs to be dealt with. The next stage in that, and this covers a lot of people, but also the elder population we talked about. There are a number of states in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic that have been working on something called the Transportation Climate Initiative, TCI. This is going to be a multi-state effort to try and create transportation systems and ways to address how transportation contributes to carbon. This can be a win-win for us. Vermont really doesn't have a coherent transportation system because we're a rural, spread out state. It's something we're going to need moving forward, and that would be one way we can change the landscape. If we have light rail, if we have Uber-like vans to bring people to the light rail, if we have more buses on a regular basis, we can drive our cars less. The other piece is that we would do well to do more cluster development in our downtowns instead of sprawl. That would, again, reduce driving and better use our utilities in a more concerted way. And let's face it, transportation is the largest sector of our carbon footprint in Vermont, transportation and home heating. So if we're going to have a cleaner future for Vermont, then that's the piece we need to deal with. The other thing I want to say as someone who's a bicycler is I hope we can do things to make bicycling easier and safer. Now, looking ahead to Vermont, Vermont is changing already right now, as is the nation. And people of color are moving to Vermont. The numbers are rising. We have about 4% of the population of Vermont right now that are people of color. But if you look at our schools, that population, some schools is 10, 15, 20%. And this is why it behooves us to take on this work of addressing systemic racism. We want these kids to grow up in a place where they feel welcome. We all would benefit from greater diversity. And it's especially important for us to make that effort, to set the intention that we're going to take on the work of addressing systemic racism. This goes for Black, Indigenous, Latinx people, but also in the realm of justice, we need to remember that LGBTQ plus people are still struggling. And again, at the federal level, there's attempts to turn back the progress we've made. Recently, there was a news report that 2 Supreme Court justices were talking about how that they don't approve of same-sex marriage and feel we should do what they can to return to the way things used to be. I don't agree. This is good progress. It's progress with justice, and it brings everybody to be treated equally. So what I hope is we can continue to do that. We can have an economy that works for everybody, not just a select few. The tax giveaways that President Trump put into play, it affected our economy in a way that really helped millionaires and corporations in a way the average worker didn't. Now we have a cohort of millionaires and corporations that pay little or no tax, and how that travels down to us is it means we pay more. They pay less, we pay more. If the federal government gave more transportation help, more healthcare help, more prescription drug help, it could reduce the expenses at the local level. So I want an economy that works for all Vermonters. I also want to just put in a plug for affordable housing and for the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. One of the barriers to keeping our young people here or bringing them into Vermont is what a tight housing market it is here in Vermont. And without the housing trusts in this county and around Vermont, there just wouldn't be affordable housing being built. And we need that. We need what we're doing, and we need more if we want to keep the economy going and growing our state. So my hope is that the Vermont of the next generation is going to be even better, but we need to set the intentions and do the work now.
All right. Well, thank you for that vision. Last question for this show is, what do you want voters to know about you?
I would hope people know from my years of public service that I care deeply about Vermonters. It's a beautiful state. It's a great state with mountains and trees, but it's Vermonters that are the real beauty of Vermont. I think Vermont's the best place to live, work, raise a family, and retire to. And we have a bright future ahead of us. But what I think is that Vermonters want to do better, and I want to be part of that, to bring environmental justice, economic justice, racial, social justice, so that we can make that progress, but that progress comes with justice. I want people to know I want to be part of that. I also want people to know that I'm here. I'm ready to listen to you and ready to bring your concerns. We had a real challenge over this last winter when the economy went in the tank and a lot of people lost their jobs. The unemployment system was just overwhelmed in Vermont between not having enough staff and a 30-year-old computer system. Things didn't go well. So a lot of House members, myself included, jumped into this, and we said we want to help. We were given a portal just for legislators to contact people at the Department of Labor after constituents contacted us, and it's been one of the busiest sessions because of doing the policy work and constituent work like that to help people get their unemployment. Most of the cases I can say we've been able to solve. Some of them didn't, but from that, I want people to know what happens in your life at the ground level is just as important what happens on the policy level at Montpelier. And I want to be the conduit between those two things happening. It's our job in a representative democracy to bring your concerns forward, and I want to continue to do that. But whether it's unemployment or another incident that happened in Putney last winter, a plow truck took down a stop sign at a very important juncture. I was able to get on the phone, call the transportation secretary, and within 2 hours they were putting another sign up. Those kinds of things at the ground level are just as important as anything else we do. And I want people to know that I'm accessible and ready to work for you.
State Representative Mike Maricki, a Democratic Party candidate for state representative for Windham 4 District. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you. And again, thanks for your help with this. These are times where the press, the media help create an informed electorate. And these are tough times for democracy right now. And this is invaluable work, so thanks.
The general election is Tuesday, November 3rd. Remember, you can vote early in person, vote absentee by mail, or vote absentee hand-delivered on Election Day. Whichever way works for you, please vote. Thanks for watching Meet the Candidates 2020, sponsored in part by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. I'm Marty Cohn. Stay healthy.